feature all kinds of things. And it is an enormous, enormous business, multi-million-dollar business. In fact, their publishers say that the proof is very simple. It's called supply and demand. People want it. Others say that it's not true at all, that like drugs, there are hidden dangers. Dangers, some say, that include acting out violence against women. Would you join me in welcoming Gloria Leonard? Gloria is the only female publisher of one of these magazines. It's called High Society. And also Barbara Finlan is here. She is the founder of Women's Alliance Against Pornography here in Boston. And we sat you two next to each other. I'm not sure that that's going to be very comfortable for you because you absolutely take opposing views. Your magazine, what will you not include in it?
Well, while I like to think of myself as being a First Amendment purist, I unfortunately do have to wear the crown every month of being a censor and determining what does and what does not go into High Society. We do have, of course, parameters that I will not exceed. Several of them are, for example, anything that remotely smacks of kiddie porn, of bestiality, of extreme violence or S&M. We will perhaps illustrate S&M or bondage and discipline in terms of the garb and the paraphernalia and how people in consensual situations relate to it, but we won't depict anything that looks particularly brutal or garish.
Well, but wait. If you are showing the paraphernalia, the whips and the chains and that kind of thing and alluding to it, isn't that all that someone who is inclined that way needs, just to be stimulated?
Well, they certainly don't need a magazine like High Society to foster those kinds of feelings if they're already there. We try and appeal to as broad an audience as possible in terms of sexuality, because there are so many different fetishes, fantasies, and phenomena that appeal to a myriad of people out there. And so we try and touch all possible sexual bases. And sex is a great common denominator in that it defies all socioeconomic barriers. People say, who reads your magazine? It isn't blue collar or white collar necessarily, or students, or it's just a great cross-section. What goes on in the libido defies that categorization.
Well, let's let Barbara, your opposer here, talk to you.
Yeah, it's interesting the way that you're talking about the content of your magazine, because that's not necessarily the content at all. You do show bondage. You don't just show the paraphernalia. There's bondage. There's beating.
No
there's
beating.
Abuse.
Not in maybe in other magazines.
Discipline, as in beating. And you're calling that sexuality. You're selling abuse as sexuality.
So how do you feel about this, Barbara?
Well, I think that it's dangerous. I mean, High Society is typical among pornography, and High Society is just chock full of abuse and power situations where women are on the receiving end of sexual abuse. Now, the effect of that is to make sexual abuse of women seem normal and seem to be the thing that women really want.
Well, I would take issue because we do not show women being abused whatsoever. If anything, the women are in a power situation, and I find it ironic that in light of all the advances in the feminist movement, that I, as a woman who am in what has traditionally been a male dominion, being a publisher of what's considered a men's magazine, one would think that if the bottom line of the feminist movement is for women to be able to achieve, assert, accomplish with the least amount of impediments, that the feminists would be in my corner cheering me on, saying, yay, Gloria, you're going where no one else has dared go before.
What do you meaning what? That you're a publisher of a magazine that some call exploitive of women, though. So I mean, I don't know how feminists would jump on that bandwagon.
Well, I think that feminists, by and large, the more radical ones, the militant ones, are very humorless about sex and would like almost to pretend as though it doesn't exist. And I don't promote the notion that one eat, breathe, and drink sex 24 hours a day, but that when a sexual situation presents itself, one should be as aware and informed as possible.
Wait, I have to just say that I think there's a true feminist around who doesn't take pride in her sexuality, but know that there are many aspects to her life. But I'm not sure that that's what Barbara's arguing with you.
Well, first of all, I'd like to say that having opportunity in any field for women does not mean that women should have the license to abuse women in the same way that men have traditionally abused women. That does not represent progress at all.
But I'm not abusing women.
And secondly, for a woman to realize her full sexuality, that's important. But I don't think that what's going on in a magazine like High Society is really the realization of our sexuality.
Gloria, why are there no men in the magazine?
Oh, sure there are. We run at least one scenario
There
every
are.
month that
Right.
does feature a man.
A man with a man as naked as a woman. The other
Absolutely.
women in the magazine.
As naked, but usually, I'll give you an example of a scenario that appeared in High Society a few months ago. An American soldier in a Southeast Asian country on a mission comes across an Asian woman and rapes her. And the woman decides that that's what she has really wanted. He discovers that she has really wanted to be raped. He's naked in the scenario, but he's a rapist.
Well, I think that perhaps that you may be reading a little more into the scenarios than we are intending to project. The male-female scenarios are usually, I think, exemplifying consensual kind of sex. And as I say, in an attempt to try to appeal to as many variances as there are in human sexuality, that is just one out of thousands of layouts and, that have run in High Society. And the rape fantasy, which a lot of women, there's, of course, two sides of the fence. Some women deny the fact that they have it. Others, of course, quite openly admit to it.
I've never heard anyone say that before, but that's, you know, let's do something here. You have a hotline.
Yes.
Let's listen to something. This is it is
Telephone hotline.
Yes, it is a telephone hotline, and we cannot reveal all of its content, but we'll give you a little sampling.
I'm Seth, a beautiful meditation expert here at the Live Wire, to help you really learn to relax. So just lay down and let your energy flow freely. It heightens the experience if I gently caress you. Your big looks like it's something. And ooh, see how stiff you. Oh yes, that's it. Oh. If you want to share in the benefits of mutual meditation, just call me again after 1.
Call the benefits of, share the benefits of what?
I missed that also.
I missed that. What's the purpose of this? Why did you establish this?
Well, when we started that about 2.5 years ago, actually, it was an attempt to really add another dimension to a very one-dimensional format, which is a pretty girl on a page of a magazine. And we started out with just a mere answering machine in New York City with a local number, and the response was so overwhelming that to try and meet the demand, because we were getting a lot of irate readers calling and saying it's a ripoff, I call the number and it's always busy. This coincided with the breakup of AT&T. At that time, New York Telephone had to divest itself of 21 of what is called the dial-it channels that give you the weather and the horoscope and so forth. And since there had been no protocol for distributing these lines, they held a lottery. And we won one of the lotteries, and were receiving at the outset, when we switched over to this sophisticated system, over 500,000 calls a day.
All right, the progression of these calls. If I were to pick up the phone and call this number in New York, which is not toll-free, then wouldn't I then
It is
be...
in New York, it's not from here. Right.
Then wouldn't I be requested or told that I could call another number at another area code? For another, I mean, it is a hotline that's progressive, isn't it? And then isn't the live sex call teased at the end of that third call?
We're experimenting with the live phone call situation at the moment, but basically what it is a 57-second pre-recorded message,
yes,
which reflects the different women
but it
who are
encourages
in the magazine.
that, from that call it encourages, now call another area code.
Not every time.
Not every time.
We're just
How
experimenting
much do you
with
make
that.
on that?
Well, in New York, the breakdown is we're earning 2 cents per call.
$10,000 a day, roughly.
Well, we're not at this point still getting 500,000 calls a day. We're getting about 500,000 calls a month in New York right now. It has tapered down. But we are online in other cities right now with similar numbers.
You split the profits, or the phone company gets some of that money.
They get most of the money.
Wait a minute.
As a matter of fact, phone rates, while people complain about them being too high, would be even higher yet if it wasn't for the enormous success of our phone system, which has defrayed a lot of the phone rates.
Oh, well, now it's a public service. Wait a minute, Barbara, go ahead.
Wait a minute, it's hardly a public service. First of all, I want to take exception to what you called the traditional content of your magazine, Pretty Girls on a Page. It's not simply that. But I think that when we look at the phone call business, I think what we have to look at is what it means to women. What it means is men are getting used to increased sexual access to women. And that's what pornography has always done, is provide sexual access of women to men. And men therefore start to demand more and more of it. That's the danger to women. The phone calls provides this to an amazing extent. You know, men who may not be used to reading pornography, seeing pornographic movies, can now simply pick up a phone and have instant access to women. The effect of this is to make all men get used to that and demand continual access to women, which has an effect on all of us.
Well, we don't have a psychologist. Well, we do, but Tom is not a part of this discussion. How do you feel about all this, bottom line, Gloria? I mean,
well, what I think is interesting, that I don't know about the Barbara's group here in Boston, but in New York, for example, if you were to take the tour of Women Against Pornography's little show that they put on for those who are interested, they have slides and they have a talk, and it usually shows the woman being demeaned or degraded in some way. However, if you take a real honest look at S&M, for example, which is what they seem to focus on more than anything else in their presentation, almost all the S&M that I have ever seen in any of the bookstores in 42nd Street or in other cities, it always shows the man being dominated by the woman, yet they always seem to purposefully omit that from their presentation.
well, it's a discussion that will go on and on.